Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Tanya for those of you that are new here, and I am a watercolor artist and a furniture painter, so you will be seeing both types of tutorials on this channel. But Halloween is only a week away and I felt like painting a pumpkin for you, but I wanted to give it a little bit of a twist. I didn't want to do your traditional orange pumpkin. I wanted to paint a white pumpkin for you. So I hope you enjoy the video. So today I'm going to be painting a pumpkin for you. It's going to be a little bit more of a sophisticated pumpkin. It's going to be a white pumpkin with some greenery around it. I'm going to be using my Winsor watercolors, my Grumbacher brushes. I'll let you know what size I'm using as I go along. I've got my Arteza watercolor paper, and then at the very end, I am going to be bringing in a little bit of these Arteza watercolor brush pens, just for a little bit more detail at the very end. Oh, and one more thing, I'm going to be bringing in at the end also a little bit of this white acrylic ink, just for some highlights. So first I'm going to start with sketching out my pumpkin. I don't want it to be too big. So I'm taking a pencil, a number 2 pencil, I'm just going over it very lightly. And you can Google images of pumpkins if you want to. I'm just going off the top of my head here. Okay, and then I'm just going to make the little stem. And I'm not going to give it too much detail. And I'm going to put a little greenery around it, more towards the bottom here. You don't have to draw all of it because we will just be bringing it in with the watercolor later, but just to kind of show you where it is, if you want to just do like a little vine and maybe some little leaves off it. But you don't have to be too detailed about it. It's just to give you kind of an idea of where things are going to lay. And I'll have it come out this way. And you can do your leaves any different shapes. You could do little heart-shaped leaves. You could do just regular oval leaves. It doesn't really matter. This is your painting. I'm not copying anything. I'm just kind of going off the top of my head. So just make it your painting. And then I'm also going to be bringing in, which I'm not going to be drawing that right now, but I'm going to be bringing in some like more little branches. So that's really all I'm going to do at this point. So the rest is going to be paint. I'm going to be pulling in my Payne's Gray watercolor. And I want to go around, since the pumpkin is going to be white, I'm going to leave the pumpkin alone right now. We're just going to come in with some shadows later. But right now I just want to do the background. And I want the background to be a little bit darker, just to make the pumpkin pop off the page a little bit. So I'm doing this wet on dry. So I did not wet my paper first because I want a little bit more of a crisp edge here around my pumpkin. Or you can go ahead, if you want to do the wet on wet, you could just go ahead and just wet your paper. Just be really careful going around your pumpkin. Just take a bigger wash brush if you want, and then just go over it. Make sure your brush is nice and wet, and then just go over kind of what you just did so it bleeds it out. And I'm just going to kind of do like a circular motion here. So I've got 2 brushes in my hands at the same time. So one is, this is a size 5, by the way. And then this is a 1/2 inch wash brush. So if you wanted to follow along with me, that's what I'm using. So I'm still picking up my Payne's Gray. I'm going around carefully around my pumpkin and the stem. And it's okay if one side is darker than the other. Actually, to me, that feels more natural just because of your light source. So right now my light source would be more on the left side. So you always want to think about where your light source is too. So then I'm going to pick up my 1/2 inch brush. I'm going to dip it in water and I'm going to go around my edge. See how that bleeds out then? And you can go over it as many times as you want. And that kind of gives it a nice soft look. And I'm just going to go kind of in a circular motion. I'm not going to go straight across my page. This painting here, since the pumpkin is the main focal point, I'm just going to kind of go around. So it'll be like a circular motion around this pumpkin. And you can use these as cards too. It'd be great just to give somebody a little card like this, you know, for the fall, for Halloween, for Thanksgiving. So I'm gonna go in with a little bit more of my Payne's Gray, and I'm just gonna go around some of these leaves that I had drawn in towards the bottom. And I'm just gonna go around my pumpkin a little bit here. And it doesn't have to be perfect. Okay. You could do your pumpkin any color. I just decided to do this painting more of a gray and white. I wanted it to be a little bit more sophisticated, and I love black and white, gray and white combos. So that's what I'm gonna do today. So what I'm gonna do is just put a little bit of shadowing on my pumpkin. So all these grooves that your pumpkin has, obviously, they're a little bit darker. So you're gonna wanna go in and you can take your Payne's Gray again, or black, or whatever you choose, whatever color you choose to make your pumpkin. And I'm just going over the grooves a little bit here. I wash off my brush. I come in with just a damp brush, and I'm just gonna lightly go over it just to bleed it into the rest of the pumpkin, because you don't want that harsh line to be on both sides. You want it to at least be blended on one side. If you want to blend it on the other side, you could totally do that too. The only thing is it kind of dulls down where the two sides meet. It's just gonna kind of dull it down a little bit, so it's not gonna be as sharp, is I guess what I'm trying to say. So see how that just dulled it down a little bit? But if we were to have just bled it on one side, which I'll do on this one here just to show you, it makes it a little bit more sharp. So you can see that this one's a little bit more of a faded line. This one here, I'm gonna do a little bit more of a crisp line. So I'm just gonna dull it down on one side just to show you what I'm talking about. So I'm taking my clean brush and I'm just going on one side and letting my line bleed on just that one side. Okay, so this is what I was trying to show you. See how this one here is a little bit more of a faded blended line where the two curves of the pumpkin meet? This one here, I just blended it out on one side. So you see a little bit more of a crispness where the two sides of the pumpkin meet. So it just depends on which effect you're going for. So it could be a little bit more blended, blurred, or a little bit more crisp. And either one, to me, looks really, really nice. So I'm gonna go ahead and do my other little line here. And then with the clean brush, I'm just gonna blend it out on one side again. Now remember to leave some white, especially if you're doing your pumpkin white like I am. You don't want to blend it in all the way across the pumpkin, because you do want to leave a lot of that white space showing because your pumpkin is white. All right, so I'll take a little bit more Payne's Gray, and I'm going to come in around some of my leaves that I had penciled in at the beginning here. And again, with just some water on my brush, I'm going to blend it out so it looks like there's shadowing on the bottom of my pumpkin, like those leaves and vines are creating shadows on the bottom of my pumpkin. I'm going to do that to the rest. So then I just come in with a clean brush and I just kind of go in a circular motion back and forth until I blend it in to where I think it looks good. And then if you think it went up a little bit too much, before it dries, take your paper towel and dab it off. That way the paint will, it won't come off completely, but it will lighten it a little bit for you. Okay, so I think it needs a little bit more shadowing on this side. So basically what we're doing in this painting is we're just putting down paint where our shadows are. We're not painting the pumpkin. Now, if this was an orange pumpkin or a yellow pumpkin or green pumpkin, you'd be putting down those colors right now. But since this is a white pumpkin, we're just putting in where the shadows are. And that's what creates your movement and shape of the pumpkin. And it's got these little, in the back here, a little bit more shadowing going on because it's the back of the pumpkin you don't see too well. So you can go ahead and shadow that in too. If you feel that you need to move down a size in a brush, like I said, I'm using a 5, but if you wanted to move down to a 2 or a 3, that's totally fine also. Your call. This is just how big my pumpkin is, and this is what I feel comfortable with. But your pumpkin might be larger or smaller. So I'm going to pick up a little bit more of my Payne's Gray, and I'm going to come in a little bit and just deepen up down here on the bottom. Just to give it a little bit more of a shadow down here. I'm going to gently blend it out. It's looking really nice. All right, so what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to start bringing in some of my brown for my stem here. You can use any brown you want, anything that looks good to you. Now you're going to want to leave a little bit of highlights on here. So just make sure that you leave a little bit of white peeking through. And we'll probably be using a couple different colors of brown. Maybe more of a burnt sienna, and then maybe more of a burnt umber. And just make it as dark or as light as you want. And it's very textured. Your stem is textured. If you ever picked up a pumpkin by the stem before, you know that it's a little rough. So it's okay to just kind of pounce your brush on here and make it look a little rough. And remember to leave some of those, some of the white showing through. All right, I'm gonna pick up a little bit of my Payne's Gray, just a little bit, and just kind of dab it in there as well, just to dull down that color a little bit. And again, I'm just pouncing it on, making it very kind of textured looking. And you can cover up if you think there's too much white on there, just start covering it up a little bit. All right, I'm gonna let that dry, and then I'm probably gonna go in over with some brown again. Oops. All right, so at this point, while I'm letting that dry, I'm gonna start going in over my leaves. And I'm gonna be using, I believe this is a sap green. You can use any green you want. You can dull it down with a blue, you can, or the Payne's Gray, or a different green. If you wanted to make your leaves a little bit more limey, then add a little bit of yellow to it. If you wanted to make your leaves a little bit more brown, then add a little bit of a red tone or a burnt sienna to it. And leave a little bit of white highlight on these leaves as well. So don't go over the whole leaf. And then we'll come in later with a little bit of our brush pens and add a little bit of detail to these. If you wanted to do your leaves at this point with the brush pens, you could definitely do that too. I'll do one here just to show you what I'm talking about. All right, so that was just my sap green. But now I will do one in with my Arteza brush pens. So let's say you wanted to go in with your leaf. You don't want to completely outline it unless that's the look you're going for, is an outlined leaf. But if you want it to look a little bit more realistic, just maybe outline one side and just kind of put a little bit of your marker down like that. So as you can see, the marker is not completely shaping the leaf at this point. So I'm moving to a size, I believe this is a 2, since my leaves are a little smaller. So I'm coming in with just some water, and I'm going to shape my leaf that way. There. So you can see one side of my leaf is a little bit darker than the other because that's the side that I just took my water and I bled it over to the other side of the leaf. So you can do your leaves like that too if you want. I'll do another one. And it gives a little bit more crispness to your leaves. I find the markers, you can get very detailed with these, which I love. I love working with the markers and regular watercolor in the same painting because you can achieve both different looks in one painting. So again, I just did the one side and I'm bleeding it over. Okay. So you can do a few like that, and you could do a few just the traditional way with just regular watercolor. There. So we'll let that dry and we'll go back to our stem up here. So let's go back in with our brown, and you can start covering up some of these highlights if you want to. If you think it's got a little bit too much highlight, you can start covering them up a little bit. And I'm going to start deepening up a little bit of my Payne's gray as well. And you can bring in any other colors. I'm going to bring in a little bit of blue later, just to make the pumpkin pop out a little bit from the background, because right now the pumpkin and the background are the same Payne's gray tone. So just to make the pumpkin pop off my page a little bit, I am going to add a little bit of blue. You can add a little bit of any color you want. That's just the color I'm choosing, just to make it stand out from the background a little bit. So I'm just deepening up the little crevices where the pumpkins meet here, where the sides meet, I should say. So this is what creates that roundness to your pumpkin. All right, so I'm going to add a little bit of blue to this. And I'm going to let it bleed in a little bit, just to make my pumpkin pop off the page a little bit more and make it stand out from the background color. You don't need to do this part if you don't want to. If you like it to be a little bit more monotone and a little bit more subtle, you definitely don't need to do this step. But I just want it to stand out a little bit. But you don't want to add too much that it makes your pumpkin look like it's the color that you're adding, because I don't want a blue pumpkin. I just want to add a little bit to where I already had laid down my Payne's gray. There. All right, let's see if my leaves aren't completely dry. I'm gonna go ahead and dry my leaves and then we're gonna add a little more detail to them. Okay, so I went ahead and I dried my painting. So I'm gonna go ahead and add a little bit more detail to my leaves. So I think I'm gonna pick up my brush pens again. Actually, maybe I'll pick up this one. It's got a little bit more of an olivey color. Let's see if this shows up. Yeah, it does. So I'm gonna add a little bit of olive to these leaves. And I'm just laying down just a little bit here and there. And I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna blend it in with my, my brush. It's just to kind of make them pop a little bit, give them a little bit more of a detail. So I'm just laying down a little bit here and there. There's really no rhyme or reason. If you want to pick maybe just the left side of your leaves or just the right side of your leaves, that's totally fine. And then I'm going to come in with just some water on my brush and just blend it in. I'm just going in little circles. And when you see that the water is kind of drying off your brush, just pick up a little more water. Not too much because you don't want it to be bleeding all over your page, but just a little bit. You want your brush to be nice and damp. And just kind of go over the marker that you just laid down. And if you're not liking the way it looks and it's not blending the way you wanted it to, then just go ahead and just pick up a little bit more of your sap green or whatever color green you want and just go over it a little bit more. And I think I'm going to add in a little bit of my, like more of a golden yellow, just to give a little bit more of a little highlight on some of these. It's a little bit too much on these first leaves that I did, so I'm picking up that paint and I'm bringing it over onto some of the other leaves. Just so I don't waste the paint. Otherwise you could dab it off if you want to. But I figured why waste the paint? Because I wanted some more of that paint on the other leaves as well. There. So it gives a little bit of a push and pull with the darks and the lights. I'm gonna go over and make some twigs now. So it kind of looks like there's some twigs going around it. I'm gonna pick up my brush pens again. If you wanna do this with a really fine brush, and your watercolors, that's fine too. I'm just gonna come in with a light hand. Again, I love these watercolor brush pens because you can get so detailed. And then if you want it to bleed out, just add a little bit of water to it with your brush. So see that? I'm sure I'm able to achieve that look with the a really fine paintbrush as well. But I really like this look. So it's just preference. There's no right, there's no wrong. I'm going to bring in a little bit of the twigs down on the bottom. Make some going up. You can have some bleeding into your pumpkin too if you want. So it's kind of coming into your pumpkin. Some maybe going out. And I'm just using a brown. I don't know if I mentioned that. It's called coffee. If you've got the Arteza brush pens, it's called coffee. But if you don't, just use any brown or black or whatever color you want. You could be whimsical and not even make it a whole different color, like a blue or an orange. And I'll have some coming off this way. And you can make as many as you want. You could be more, you can make this a little bit more simple and not do as many, or if you want it and you love it, just keep going and just keep making some twigs. I want my painting to kind of come out this way, give it a little bit more movement. So it's kind of like starting from up here and then it comes down. It still wraps, but it comes down this way. So if you want to blend in those twigs, just use a very thin brush and apply a little bit of water. But I'm not going to do that because I like the crispness of them. But I am going to be bringing up a little bit more leaves in this area. So I'm just taking my sap green again, my number 2 brush, and I'm just bringing in a little bit of greenery up here. And this is a little bit more of a different leaf. It's a little bit more of a rounded leaf and smaller leaf. But you could do whatever you want. And you can come in and put a few over your pumpkin if you want to. And if you want to bring a little bit of those down this way, you can. There, that's pretty. All right. I'm gonna dry this. I'm gonna add a little bit more of a stem going through my, my vine here, and then I'm gonna come in with a little bit of a white detail. Okay, so I'm gonna pick up, you can do this with regular watercolor or your brush pen, and I'm just gonna add a little bit of a stem peeking through of the vine, and I'm just using a green, just kind of coming through a little bit. And if you see some of your leaves need a little bit of a stem connecting to the vine, go for it. You can just make a little stem here and there. Don't put too many because then it gets crowded, but just a little bit. And I'm gonna come in with my ink right at the end here. And take a brush that you don't really care about, one that you can wash off. It's more for acrylic. You don't want to use one of your good watercolor brush pens. And I'm just dipping it in my white acrylic ink, and I'm going to be making some little vines coming up, just to give it a little bit more of depth. I felt that it needed a little bit more white in certain areas. And if you want to do like little polka dots, you could do that too. I'll do a couple polka dots to show you what I mean. So just take your brush, and you could just kind of come in and make some polka dots if you want to. Now it shows up better, obviously, where you put your dark paint. It's not going to show up, or even on your leaves you could do a little bit. Give it a little bit more dimension. But it's not going to show up on the white paper. Now if you were to have put your Payne's Gray or whatever color you chose all the way around your pumpkin, then this would have shown up really, really nicely. But I didn't put any Payne's Gray down here. So that's really where it's gonna just show up more on the top of my painting. There, just a little bit. And if you want to come in and add a little bit of more texture to your stem, you could do that too. There. Make sure to wash off your brush really well. And if you wanted to make your painting a little bit deeper, then you can go ahead and start deepening up some of your areas again. But I think I'm going to leave mine like this. I wanted this painting to be a little bit more subtle and sophisticated. So there you go. Thanks so much for watching the video. I hope you liked it and learned a little something. And if you did like it, please give me a thumbs up and consider subscribing to this channel for more videos like this one. And you can also follow me on Facebook and Instagram. Have a great day. Bye.